Emily was on the verge of losing her job until her 18-month-old baby looked straight at him and screamed the one word that destroyed his world. Apar. He was Taeho, a feared mafia boss who ruled Seoul's underworld in silence. The cold CEO of Sunjae Empire. A man who had never felt anything until a baby he had never met called him father. Thank you for tuning into this story. If you love emotional, suspense-filled stories that feel real, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next. Trust me, this story gets deeper, darker, and more unexpected with every chapter. Now, let's begin. Emily held her crying baby tighter as she rushed through the polished lobby of Sunjae Empire. Please, baby, stop crying, she whispered, panic shaking her voice. I need this. Our life depends on it. Celine screamed louder. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. People stared. Emily checked her wristwatch again. 25 minutes left. Her palms were wet with sweat. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She had called everyone that morning. Friends, neighbors, even strangers. No one came. Her mother had promised to arrive from Nigeria by morning, but her phone was unreachable. No signal. No answer. Emily swallowed hard. What do I do now? She hurried into the waiting room, rocking Celine back and forth, wiping tears from her baby's round cheeks. Please, my love, she begged softly. Mommy is trying. A staff member passed by, then stopped suddenly. Her face drained of color. Ma'am, the woman whispered urgently, bending closer. You need to get her quiet. Emily looked up, fear gripping her chest. Why? The woman's voice dropped even lower. CEO Taeho just arrived in the lobby. Emily's heart sank. She had heard the stories. Everyone had. Taeho did not tolerate noise. He did not tolerate mistakes. He did not tolerate weakness. He's very strict, the staff added. If that baby keeps crying, you're risking your job. Emily's throat tightened. I've tried everything, she said, her voice breaking. She's teething. She didn't sleep. She can feel my stress. Well, try harder, the woman said gently but firmly. Before Emily could reply, she stood up suddenly. I'm sorry. I need to go. I have 3 minutes left. She adjusted Celine's diaper bag on her shoulder and stepped toward the elevator. That was when the room went quiet. Too quiet. The elevator doors slid open, and Taeho stepped out. Tall. Controlled. Dressed in black like power itself. His eyes were sharp, cold, unreadable. Emily froze. He checked his wristwatch calmly, then spoke without looking at her. Emily, he said, his voice low and dangerous. What did I say about interview rules? Her breath caught. Sir, I'm sorry. This isn't about being sorry, Taeho replied. The elevator doors opened again. He stepped out. Emily stood there in shock for half a second, then grabbed her baby and followed him. Inside his office, silence swallowed her whole. Sit, Taeho said. She obeyed. I assume you've been to interviews before, he asked. Yes, sir, Emily replied quickly. He nodded once. Then you should know. What I just saw tells me you are not ready for this job. Celine cried again. Taeho's jaw tightened. Emily, your baby is crying. I'm sorry, sir. Please, 2 minutes. She rushed out into the hallway, holding Celine close. Baby, please, she whispered desperately. Mommy is begging you. Celine suddenly stopped crying. Emily wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and returned to the office. Sir, I can explain. Explain what? Taeho asked coldly. My baby is teething. I called everyone. My mother promised to come this morning, but her phone is off. Emily, Taeho interrupted. I am not interested in excuses. At that moment, Celine lifted her head. Her big eyes locked onto Taeho. She stretched her small hands toward him. Something in Taeho's eyes softened. Slowly, he reached out. Emily's eyes widened. Sir? He took the baby into his arms. Celine giggled. Then she said it, clear and loud. Apar. The world stopped. Taeho stared at her, frozen. Emily's heart raced. Sir, the interview? You start work tomorrow, he said quietly. Her eyes widened in shock. Your salary will be doubled. Childcare allowance included. Emily couldn't breathe. Why? Taeho looked down at Celine. Because your daughter deserves a good life, he said. And you will need resources to give it to her. Emily whispered, but you don't even know me. His gaze lifted to hers. For a brief second, pain flashed in his eyes. I probably know you more than you think, Miss Emily. He handed her the baby. Bring her birth certificate and medical records tomorrow, he added. We'll start her insurance. Emily stood there, shaking. Her life had just changed, and she had no idea why. Emily did not sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Taeho's face, not cold, not angry, but frozen in shock as Celine called him Appa. The memory made her chest tighten. Why did he look like that? Why didn't he push her away? At dawn, Emily dressed quietly, careful not to wake Celine. She packed the diaper bag twice, checking everything again and again: milk, wipes, toys, documents. Her hands trembled as she added Celine's birth certificate and medical papers. This is just a job, she whispered to herself. Just a job. But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Sunjae Empire looked even more intimidating in the early morning light. Emily arrived early, just as Taeho ordered. The receptionist smiled politely, but said nothing. Everyone seemed to move carefully, like one wrong step could shatter the air. Emily settled into the small office, next to Taeho's. Minutes later, the door opened. Taeho stepped in without knocking. You're early, he said. Yes, sir. He glanced at Celine, who sat quietly on Emily's lap, chewing on a toy. His gaze lingered for half a second longer than necessary. Good, he said. I dislike lateness. Emily nodded. You will be my personal assistant, Taeho continued. You will attend meetings, manage schedules, and handle sensitive documents. Mistakes are not tolerated. I understand, Emily replied quickly. He turned to leave, then paused. Miss Emily. Yes, sir? Your daughter will stay in your office until childcare arrives. If she cries, bring her to me. Emily blinked. Sir? Taeho's expression didn't change. That is all. He left. Emily stared after him, stunned. The first week passed in a blur. Meetings, calls, deadlines. Emily worked harder than she ever had in her life. She didn't complain. She didn't slow down. She was determined to prove she belonged there. But what unsettled her was Taeho. Every morning, without fail, he stopped by her office. How is she today? He would ask, nodding toward Celine. She slept well. She ate. She's teething again. He listened carefully. Too carefully. Sometimes, he crouched down and let Celine hold his finger. Sometimes, he watched her sleep like he was memorizing her face. Emily noticed things no one else did. How his voice softened only around Celine. How his shoulders relaxed when she laughed. How his eyes followed her even when he pretended not to look. One afternoon, Celine reached for him again. Come, Taeho said quietly, lifting her with practiced ease. Emily's breath caught. Celine rested her head against his chest like she had done it all her life. She trusts you, Emily said without thinking. Taeho stiffened slightly. Children sense truth, he replied. They are not fooled by masks. That night, Emily lay awake again. Masks, she thought. What mask is he hiding behind? Everything changed the following week. Celine developed a fever. Emily tried to stay calm, but fear crept in fast. The fever didn't break. Celine cried through the night. At work, she struggled to focus. Then Celine collapsed into sobs, loud, painful cries that echoed down the hallway. Emily panicked. It's okay, baby. Mommy's here. But Celine shook her head. Apar, she cried. Apar. Emily froze. Taeho appeared instantly. What happened? He asked sharply. She has a fever, Emily said, her voice cracking. I'm calling a doctor. Taeho was already reaching for his coat. We're going to the hospital. Sir. That was not a suggestion. At the hospital, the doctor frowned. She needs to stay for observation. Emily's knees felt weak. Celine cried, reaching for Taeho again. He didn't hesitate. I'm here, he said softly, holding her close. I'm not leaving. Emily watched him through blurred vision. This wasn't an act. This wasn't control. This was fear. Real fear. As the night stretched on, Celine slept only when Tejo sat beside her. Emily sat across the room, heart racing. Why him? She wondered. Why does my child feel safe only with him? Tejo looked up, meeting Emily's gaze. Something passed between them, unspoken, heavy, dangerous. And for the first time, Emily felt it clearly. This connection was not normal. It was not coincidence. And whatever the truth was, it was waiting to tear their lives apart. Morning light slipped quietly into the hospital room. Emily stirred in her chair, her neck stiff, her eyes burning from lack of sleep. She had not slept more than minutes at a time. Every small sound from the bed made her heart jump. Celine lay still, her tiny chest rising and falling. The fever had eased slightly, but the doctor had warned them not to relax yet. She needs rest, he had said. And calm. Emily looked across the room. Tejo sat beside the bed, his jacket draped over the back of a chair, his sleeves rolled up. He hadn't moved all night. Not once. One hand rested gently on the edge of the mattress, close enough for Celine to touch if she stirred. He noticed Emily watching him. You should sleep, he said quietly. Emily shook her head. I'm fine. You're not, Tejo replied. You've been awake for almost 24 hours. So have you. He didn't answer that. Celine shifted, her brows tightening. A soft whimper escaped her lips. Before Emily could stand, Tejo leaned closer. I'm here, he whispered. It's okay. Celine's body relaxed instantly. Emily's breath caught. It wasn't just comfort. It was recognition. She had seen Celine cry like this before. At home, at the clinic, with strangers, even with people she trusted. But this was different. With Tejo, the fear vanished. Like her body knew him. Emily pressed her lips together. This doesn't make sense. Later that day, after the doctor confirmed Celine was stable enough to be discharged with medication, Tejo insisted on driving them home. You don't have to, Emily said, adjusting Celine's blanket. I know, he replied. I'm doing it anyway. The car ride was quiet. Celine slept peacefully in her car seat, one hand curled around a small stuffed bear Tejo had bought from the hospital shop without asking. Emily noticed everything. How he checked the rear mirror every few seconds. How his jaw tightened at every red light. How his hand clenched the steering wheel like he was holding something fragile, something precious. Why are you doing this? Emily asked suddenly. Tejo didn't look at her. Doing what? Caring this much? Silence filled the car. After a long moment, he said, because some things matter more than rules. That answer stayed with her. Days passed. Celine recovered quickly, but the bond didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. At the office, Celine crawled toward Tejo the moment she saw him. She laughed louder with him, ate better with him, slept longer when he was nearby. Apar, she called again one afternoon, reaching for him. Emily flinched. Tejo paused. You don't correct her, Emily said quietly. He met her eyes. Would it change anything if I did? Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she began to notice the weight Tejo carried, the silence that followed him, the way his eyes darkened when he thought no one was watching, the long pauses before he spoke, as if every word cost him something. He was powerful, feared, untouchable. And yet, around Celine, he looked afraid. One evening, as Emily packed up to leave, she found Tejo standing by the window in his office, staring out at the city. She looks at you like you're home, Emily said softly. Tejo's shoulders stiffened. She shouldn't. But she does. He turned slowly. Children feel things adults ignore. Emily swallowed. What do you feel? For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, I feel like something I buried a long time ago is knocking. The words sent a chill through her. That night, Celine cried in her sleep. Emily rushed to her bed, lifting her gently. Mommy's here, she whispered. Celine shook her head weakly. Appa. Emily's heart dropped. She held her daughter tighter, staring into the darkness. Why him? Why now? The next morning, Emily arrived early at the office to organize files. Taeho had asked her to access a secured folder for a routine audit. She hesitated. Then she clicked. Her eyes scanned the screen. Medical records. Clinic documents. Dates. Her hands began to tremble. This wasn't routine. This wasn't coincidence. Emily's breath grew shallow as a single terrifying thought formed in her mind. A truth big enough to destroy everything. Emily's fingers hovered over the screen. For a long moment, she didn't move. The office was quiet, too quiet. The hum of the air conditioner sounded louder than it should. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears as her eyes scanned the open folder again. Medical records. Fertility Clinic, Seoul Medical Center. DNA test results. Her throat tightened. This can't be real, she whispered. She scrolled slowly, her hands shaking now. Dates jumped out at her. Numbers. Codes. One name appeared again and again. Taeho. Emily's breath came in short bursts. Her vision blurred. The room felt like it was tilting. She clicked open the final document. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. The world stopped. Emily sank into the chair, gripping the edge of the desk like it was the only thing keeping her upright. No, she said aloud. No, no. Her mind raced backward. Every look, every pause, every moment Taeho had held Celine too carefully, too naturally. The way Celine had reached for him. The way she calmed instantly in his arms. The word apart echoed in her head. He knew. He had known. And he said nothing. The office door opened behind her. Emily. She spun around so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. Taeho stood there, his expression unreadable. How long? She demanded, her voice shaking with rage and pain. How long have you known? He closed the door quietly. You weren't meant to see that. That's not an answer. Emily shouted. How long, Taeho? He hesitated. Her heart broke even more. You tested her, Emily said, tears spilling now. You took her DNA without telling me. Silence. That pacifier, she whispered. You used it, didn't you? Taeho lowered his gaze. Yes. The words sliced through her. You had no right, she cried. She is my child. You invaded our lives. You played with my trust like it meant nothing. I needed to know, he said tightly. You needed to know? Emily laughed bitterly. So you promoted me? Paid me? Watched me every day like some experiment. That's not true. Then what is true? She demanded. Did you ever plan to tell me? Or were you just going to keep pretending until it was convenient? Taeho stepped closer. Emily. Don't, she said sharply, backing away. Don't come near me. His jaw tightened. I was afraid. Afraid, she repeated. You are Taeho. People fear you. You don't get afraid. I was afraid of losing her, he said quietly. Before I even had her. Emily stared at him in disbelief. You don't get to decide that, she said through tears. You don't get to decide what's best for my child without me. She reached for her bag, hands trembling. I quit, she said. Effective immediately. You can't, Taeho said firmly. Watch me. She turned toward the door. Emily, he called, his voice cracking for the first time. Please. She stopped but didn't turn around. You should have trusted me, she said softly. You should have told me the truth. Then she walked out. Emily didn't remember how she got home. She only remembered holding Celine close, rocking her back and forth while tears soaked her shirt. It's just us now, she whispered. Just us. Celine touched her cheek gently. Mama. Emily broke down completely. Back at Sanjay Empire, Taeho stood alone in his office. The silence felt heavier than ever. He stared at the empty space where Emily's chair used to be. For the first time in years, power felt useless. For the first time, he realized something terrifying. He might have lost the one thing he never knew he needed most. Emily did not plan to answer the door. She had just settled Celine to sleep when the knock came, slow, firm, deliberate. The kind of knock that didn't belong to a neighbor or a delivery person. Her heart dropped. She knew who it was. The knock came again. Emily. Taeho's voice called softly from the other side. Please. Just listen. She stood frozen in the hallway, her arms wrapped around herself. Her mind screamed at her to stay silent, to protect what little peace she had left. But then Celine stirred in her sleep. "Apar," she murmured faintly. Emily's chest tightened painfully. She opened the door. Tejo stood there, no guards, no driver, no power surrounding him. Just a man in a dark coat, his eyes tired, his shoulders heavy. "You shouldn't be here," Emily said, her voice flat. "I know," he replied, "but I can't leave things like this."
"You already did," she snapped.
"You left me in the dark." "I'm asking for 5 minutes," he said quietly. "If you still want me gone after that, I'll leave." Emily hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the apartment was small but warm. Celine's soft breathing echoed faintly from the bedroom. Tejo looked toward the sound, then quickly looked away, like he didn't trust himself. "You lied to me," Emily said, crossing her arms. "Every day."
"I didn't lie," he said.
I stayed silent. And that was worse. He took a slow breath. "Years ago, I faced something that made me question whether I would even have a future. I was told I might never have children. So I made a decision. To preserve a possibility." Emily's eyes narrowed. "You never told me." "I never thought that possibility would become real," he said. "Until her." Silence stretched between them. "When she called me APA," Tejo continued, his voice rough, "something broke inside me. I didn't understand it. I thought it was coincidence. But I couldn't ignore the timing, the details. And I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Emily asked. "Afraid that if I told you," he said, meeting her eyes, "you would take her and disappear before I even learned how to be a father." Emily's lips trembled. "That wasn't your choice to make," she whispered. "I know," he said immediately. "And I was wrong." Tears slipped down Emily's face despite her efforts to stay strong. "You made me feel small," she said. "Like I was being watched. Managed." "That was never my intention," Tejo said firmly. "I don't want control. I want a chance." She laughed bitterly. "A chance after betrayal?" "A chance after truth," he replied. They stood there, pain thick in the air. Finally, Emily spoke. "I'm not forgiving you today." "I'm not asking you to," he said. "I'm not promising anything," she added. "I wouldn't trust a promise you made under pain," Tejo said softly. "I only ask to be present. For her." Emily closed her eyes. Minutes passed. Then she nodded once.
"Slowly," she said.
"On my terms." Tejo exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for days. "Thank you." A week later, Tejo asked Emily to come with him somewhere. "My mother wants to meet you," he said. Emily hesitated. "Does she know?" "She knows there is a child," he replied. "She does not accept it." That should have been a warning. Mrs. Kim's house was large, cold, and perfectly arranged, like nothing out of place was allowed to breathe. Mrs. Kim barely glanced at Emily. Her eyes went straight to Celine, then hardened. "This child does not belong here," she said calmly. "And neither do you." Emily stiffened. "You and this baby," Mrs. Kim continued, "will not carry the Kim name. There will be no inheritance. No place in this family." The words cut deep. Tejo stepped forward immediately. "Enough," he said, his voice firm. "I will not allow you to speak about my daughter that way." Mrs. Kim's eyes widened slightly. "You would choose this over everything I built." "I gave up on having a child a long time ago," Tejo said. And then Celine came. "I am proud to be her father." Emily's breath caught. Mrs. Kim said nothing more. But the war had begun. The diagnosis came on a quiet afternoon. Too quiet. Emily sat across from the doctor, her hands clasped so tightly her fingers ached. Tejo stood beside her, tall and still, but his face had lost its color. The doctor cleared his throat. "It's leukemia," he said gently. "We caught it early, but it will be a difficult journey." Emily didn't hear the rest. The word echoed in her head like a gunshot. Leukemia. Her vision blurred. Her chest tightened. The room felt too small, too bright, too cruel. "No," she whispered. "She's just a baby." Tejo's hand found hers without thinking. His grip was firm, grounding. "We'll do whatever it takes," he said, his voice steady even though his eyes were burning. "Money, doctors, treatment, whatever it takes." The doctor nodded. "She'll need to stay here." Chemotherapy will start immediately, and we may need a bone marrow transplant. Emily broke down. Taeho held her as she cried, his chin resting on her hair, his body shielding her from the world like he could protect them both by force alone. Hospital days turned into long, painful nights. Machines beeped softly. Nurses came and went. Time lost meaning. Taeho never left. He slept in the chair beside Celine's bed. He read her stories even when she was too weak to respond. He whispered promises when he thought no one was listening. "I'm here," he told her again and again. "You're not alone. I won't let go." Celine's small hand often reached for his finger, holding on like it was her anchor. Emily watched everything. She saw the fear he tried to hide. The way his jaw clenched when Celine cried in pain. The way his eyes softened when she smiled, even faintly. This was not the feared man of soul. This was a father. One night, Emily found him praying silently by the window, his head bowed, his shoulders heavy.
She had never seen him like that.
While Taeho fought for his daughter's life, another battle was happening, one he didn't see coming. Mrs. Kim moved quietly. She called private meetings, spoke calmly to board members, reminded them who built Sunjae Empire after Taeho's father died. "She is emotional," she said of Emily. "He is distracted," she said of Taeho. "The company needs stable leadership." The board listened. By the time Taeho received the call, it was already done. "Temporary transfer of authority," the lawyer said carefully, "until matters are resolved." Taeho laughed once. A low, empty sound. "My daughter is fighting for her life," he said. "And you're talking to me about authority?" "I'm sorry," the lawyer replied. "This came from your mother." Taeho ended the call. He looked at Celine, pale and sleeping. For the first time, he murmured, "I don't care." Mrs. Kim didn't stop there. She invited a young woman to her home. Elegant, confident, well-connected. Her name was Naksuka. "You will marry my son," Mrs. Kim told her calmly, "when he returns to his senses." Naksuka smiled. "I won't disappoint you." Promises were made. Positions. Power. A future already planned. But Taeho knew nothing of it. All he cared about was the small body lying in that hospital bed. Weeks later, the doctor finally smiled. "We've found a match," he said. "We can proceed with the bone marrow transplant." Emily collapsed into tears of relief. Taeho closed his eyes, his head falling back against the wall as a shaky breath escaped him. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." As Celine was wheeled into surgery, Taeho kissed her forehead gently.
"Fight," he said softly.
"Your APA is right here." Emily held his hand tightly. For the first time since this nightmare began, hope flickered. But neither of them knew. The greatest betrayal was still waiting. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and fear. Emily sat with her hands clasped together, her eyes fixed on the surgery doors. Every second stretched like an hour. Taeho stood beside her, silent, his jaw tight, his shoulders squared as if he could physically hold the world together. When the doors finally opened, both of them stood at once. The doctor smiled. "The transplant was successful," he said. "Now we wait. But this is a very good sign." Emily's knees gave way. Taeho caught her before she fell. She cried into his chest, shaking with relief, with exhaustion, with hope she had been afraid to feel. "She's going to live," Emily whispered. Taeho closed his eyes, his hand pressed firmly against Emily's back. "Yes," he said hoarsely. "She's strong." Recovery was slow, but Celine fought. Each day, color returned to her cheeks. Each day, her grip grew stronger. She laughed again, softly at first, then louder, brighter. "Apar," she said one morning, smiling weakly. Taeho laughed through tears. "I'm here." For the first time in weeks, the hospital room felt warm. When Celine was finally discharged, Emily felt like she could breathe again. Life didn't feel normal, but it felt possible. Taeho drove them home in silence, his eyes fixed on the road. "I need to return to the office tomorrow," he said carefully, "just to stabilize things." Emily nodded. "I understand." What she didn't know was what was waiting for him there. Sunjae Empire hadn't changed. The same glass walls, the same polished floors, the same quiet fear in the air. But something felt different. Taeho stepped into his office and froze. A woman stood by the window.
Tall.
Elegant. Perfectly dressed. She turned slowly and smiled like she already owned the room. "You must be Taeho," she said smoothly. "I'm Naksuka." He frowned. "Why are you in my office?" She laughed lightly. "Your mother didn't tell you?" "Told me what?" "That we're getting married." Taeho stared at her for a long moment, then laughed. "I don't know what game you're playing," he said coldly, "but it ends now." Naksuka stepped closer, touching his arm.
Don't pretend.
"I have everything you want in a woman." He pulled away instantly. "Leave my office." Her smile faded slightly, but her eyes hardened. "I'll be back," she said calmly before walking out. Taeho exhaled sharply. "I'll handle it," he told himself. Emily doesn't need this stress. He didn't call her. He didn't explain. That mistake would cost him everything. The next afternoon, Emily decided to surprise Taeho. Celine was asleep at home with a caregiver. Emily wanted to thank him for staying, for fighting, for loving her daughter so fiercely. She walked into Sunjae Empire with a soft smile on her face.
She went straight to his office.
The door was slightly open.
She stopped.
Naksuka stood inside. Too close. Her hand reached out, brushing Taeho's arm. Emily's smile vanished. Her heart dropped into her stomach. She watched Taeho freeze, not pushing Naksuka away fast enough, not speaking, not explaining. In that moment, the truth twisted itself into something ugly. So this is it, Emily thought. All this time, I was the temporary one. Her chest burned. She turned and walked away before either of them noticed her. That night, Emily packed.
Quietly. Carefully.
Celine slept peacefully, unaware that her world was about to shift again. Emily's hands shook as she folded clothes into the suitcase. "I won't beg," she whispered to herself. "I won't stay where I'm not chosen." When Taeho arrived home later, the lights were on. Suitcases stood by the door. Emily was holding Celine. Taeho froze. "They're leaving," he whispered. His heart dropped harder than it ever had before. Taeho stood frozen at the doorway, staring at the suitcases like they were weapons pointed straight at his chest. "Emily," his voice came out rough. "What is this?" Emily didn't look at him. She adjusted Celine on her hip, her face calm but empty, the kind of calm that comes after a heart has already broken. "We're leaving," she said simply. The words crushed him. "No," Taeho whispered, stepping forward.
Please.
"Don't do this." "You should have thought about that," Emily replied, finally meeting his eyes. "Before today." Confusion flashed across his face. "Before what?" Emily laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Don't pretend. I saw her. In your office. Touching you." Realization hit him like a punch. "Naksuka," he said quickly. "Emily, listen." "I listened enough," she snapped. "I trusted you. I believed every word you said. And I walked in on that." "It wasn't what you think," he said desperately. "I pushed her away. I told her to leave." "But you didn't tell me," Emily shot back. "You let me find out like that." Celine stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Apar?" The sound broke him. Taeho dropped to his knees in front of them without thinking. "I swear on my life," he said, his voice shaking. "I have never touched her. I never wanted her. My mother forced this on me while Celine was in the hospital." Emily hesitated, her grip tightening on her daughter. "She took over the company," Taeho continued. "She arranged everything. I thought I could handle it alone. I didn't want to add more pain to your life." Tears slid down Emily's cheeks. "You don't get to decide what pain I can handle." "I know," he said softly. "And I was wrong. Again. But please don't take my daughter away." Emily looked down at Celine. The child reached for Taeho, her small hands opening and closing. "Apar, come." Emily's chest ached. "Give me time," she said quietly. "Just time." Taeho nodded immediately. "I'll wait. I'll do anything." They followed him back inside. The next morning, Emily dressed carefully. She wore a calm face, but her heart was pounding. "I'm coming with you to the office," she told Taeho. He looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "I want this to end properly." At Sanjay Empire, Emily sat quietly in Taeho's office, her posture straight, her eyes sharp. The door opened. Naksuka walked in and stopped short when she saw Emily. "And who are you?" she asked, her tone sharp. Emily stood calmly. "I'm his fiancée." Naksuka laughed. "That's impossible. I'm the woman he's marrying." Emily smiled, slow and steady. "Then someone lied to you." She stepped closer. "We already have a child together." Naksuka's smile cracked. "You're lying." "Am I?" Emily replied. "Ask him." All eyes turned to Taeho. He said nothing because there was nothing to deny. Naksuka's face darkened with rage. "You think love will save you?" She raised her hand. Before it could land, Emily caught her wrist midair and pushed her back hard. Naksuka hit the wall, stunned. Taeho didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't protect Naksuka. That was the answer. Naksuka stared at him, her eyes filling with humiliation. "You chose her," she whispered. "Yes," Taeho said quietly. "I always did." Naksuka straightened herself, pride shattered. "This isn't over," she said, but her voice lacked strength. She walked out and never came back. That evening, Taeho drove straight to his mother's house. Mrs. Kim looked up calmly.
So,
"You embarrassed the woman I chose." "You embarrassed yourself," Taeho replied. "You don't control my life. You don't control my family." Mrs. Kim scoffed. "That woman and her child are my family," he interrupted firmly. "And I will marry Emily, whether you approve or not." Silence filled the room. Mrs. Kim reached for her phone and dialed Naksuka. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. Finally, she lowered the phone and exhaled. "Do as you wish," she said coldly. Taeho turned and walked away. That night, Emily sat beside Celine's bed, watching her sleep peacefully. Taeho stood in the doorway. "I'm still here," Emily said softly. "We didn't leave." He nodded, emotion choking his voice. "Thank you." This time the truth had survived. The morning light crept gently into the room, soft and warm, like it knew it was not welcome to rush this moment. Emily stood by the window, watching Celine play on the rug. The little girl laughed as she stacked colorful blocks, her laughter filling the room with a kind of peace Emily had almost forgotten was possible. Behind her, Taeho watched them both. For the first time in his life, the silence did not feel empty. "I never imagined my life would look like this," Emily said quietly without turning. "So much fear. So many tears." Taeho stepped closer. "Neither did I. But this feels real." Emily turned to face him. Her eyes searched his, not for promises, but for truth. "I need to say this clearly," she said. "I didn't stay because of your power, your money, or your name. I stayed because when my daughter was dying, you never left her side." Taeho's throat tightened. "I would never leave her. Or you." She nodded. "Then we moved forward. No secrets. No control. Just honesty." "I swear," he said, "on everything I am." Celine toddled over, tugging at Taeho's leg. "Apar." He smiled, lifting her easily. "Yes, my love." Emily watched them, her heart full and aching at the same time. Somehow, through chaos and pain, they had found their way here. Weeks later, Sanjay Empire buzzed with quiet shock. The board meeting was brief. Taeho walked in calm, confident, unshaken. He reclaimed his seat, not through force, but through clarity. Mrs. Kim sat across the table, her expression unreadable. "I stepped aside because I believed control was love," she said finally. "I was wrong." The room went silent. "I will not interfere again," she added. "Your family is your choice." Taeho nodded once. "Thank you." It was not forgiveness, but it was surrender. The wedding was small. No press. No headlines. No luxury display. Just a quiet garden, white flowers, soft music, and sunlight filtering through the trees. Emily wore a simple dress. No diamonds. No crown. Just herself. Taeho waited at the altar, his hands trembling slightly, something no one had ever seen before. When Emily walked toward him, holding Celine's hand, his breath caught. This was not power. This was love. Do you take Emily, the officiant asked, to be your partner, your equal, and your family? I do, Taeho said without hesitation. And do you take Taeho? I do, Emily replied before the question finished, smiling through tears. When the rings were exchanged, Celine clapped loudly. Again, she demanded. Laughter filled the garden. Mrs. Kim stood at the back, watching silently. When Emily met her eyes, Mrs. Kim inclined her head, small, restrained, but real. That was enough. That evening, as the sun dipped low, they sat together on the porch of their home. Celine slept between them, her head resting on Taeho's chest. Emily leaned against his shoulder. She knew, Emily said softly. From the very beginning, she knew you were her father. Taeho looked down at his daughter. Maybe children see things clearly because they don't fear them yet. Emily smiled. Then maybe we should learn from her. He kissed her forehead. I will spend my life trying to deserve this. You already are, she said. In that moment, the past loosened its grip. The lies, the fear, the power struggles, all of it faded. What remained was simple. A man who chose love over control. A woman who chose trust over fear. And a child who brought them together with a single word. A par.